They called us harmless. We didn't argue. Why would we? It suited us. For 90 years we smiled in their council chambers, signed their charters, handed them the technology they couldn't build themselves, and watched them mistake generosity for weakness. Then they drew first blood. 3 days later, the smiles stopped. What followed wasn't war, it was correction. And they were already too late to stop it. The galaxy liked us best when we were furniture. 90 years in the Galactic Assembly and Earth did everything right. We signed the charters, smiled on cue, donated technology like we were paying for a very expensive dinner we didn't order. They called me a human liaison officer, which is assembly for houseplant with shoes. Orion Prime was the capital. Polished towers, silver weather, a skyline engineered to make you feel poor. The locals were proud of their culture, which mostly involved never looking at service staff and collecting flavors of superiority like it was a wine list. They joked about our history, 2 near extinctions, a handful of genocides narrowly avoided, an alarming talent for setting ourselves on fire and calling it progress. They said we'd been civilized by membership. I let them say it. If someone needs to narrate your leash, it isn't yours. The Kirak Dominion hated us most. Reptilian, lacquered scales, smiles like cutlery. Their ambassador called us upright vermin on an open mic once, then clarified by saying in Kiraki the phrase means plucky improvisers. The assembly applauded the cultural nuance. We applauded too. It's polite to clap for the magician while you're memorizing where he hides the knife. Of course, what they didn't realize was that the knife had been sharpened for decades. Our orbital yards were civilian only, but every system could be flipped from agriculture drone production to interceptor hull assembly in under 36 hours. Our AI oversight networks were purely for environmental control, except for the 15% of their processing reserved for an encrypted military partition no assembly inspection team had ever passed. We didn't cheat. We simply obeyed the rules they wrote. Rules so focused on banning open weapons that they forgot to forbid building the parts. Then came military transparency. We'd given them fusion generators, pan-pathogen cures, climate stabilizers, clean thorium stacks. The assembly wanted our classified defense lattice. We said no. 1 syllable, very polite. They took it as a declaration of war. Sanctions landed. They reassigned Earth's orbital defense to the Kirak. Symbolic, they said. It was. It symbolized a very short countdown. 11 days later, a Kirak-helmed assembly ship malfunctioned and dropped a kinetic rod through a refugee ring over Tethys. 2,000 people. Mostly medics. Mostly kids. The recording doesn't show a malfunction. It shows a decision. The assembly reacted exactly as you'd expect from a room full of people who think bad news is just a scheduling error. The Visari, sleek, fox-faced bureaucrats, murmured that, surely this will be clarified, which was optimistic, considering their idea of a contingency plan is filing more paperwork and trusting it will intimidate reality into compliance. The Jultari, a 12-limbed consensus species, immediately scheduled a committee to study regret. It took them 8 months to reach quorum. Regret was approved. Non-binding, of course. The Kirak, naturally, claimed the tragedy proved humans shouldn't be allowed near orbital defense systems. This from the species currently piloting our orbital defense systems. We noticed. 3 days later, we stopped smiling. On day 3, every human relay across assembly space went dark. Not jammed, not attacked, just off. You'd be amazed how loud off is. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even revenge. It was a systems test. One we'd been rehearsing under the name Protocol Eclipse for 27 years. Officially, it was disaster recovery training. The disaster part turned out to be accurate. Embassies shuttered. Research links hung. Joint databases fell into the uncanny quiet of systems waiting for credentials that never arrive. To the assembly, it was sudden. To us, it was simply execution day. The assembly decided we were sulking. They sent a recon fleet to assess compliance. 5 capitals, 12 cruisers, 50 fighters. The briefing memo called it a heartbeat check. Accurate enough, if your idea of medicine is sticking a stethoscope in a volcano to see if it's angry. They never saw the ambush coming because there wasn't one. We'd already taught the local space to make them vanish. The same gravitational calibration tech they'd seen in our agricultural asteroid program could, in the right configuration, close a ship into its own shadow. None of them came back. Official explanation: gravitational anomalies consistent with a variable black brane ripple, which is assembly for space did it. Space does many things. This wasn't one of them. Then a Velocin Belt research station went silent. No debris, no transponder, just a sentence burned into a maintenance loop in flawless assembly standard. You drew first blood. Earth answers last. The Korn Syndic, amphibious, sharp teeth, sharper accountants, proposed immediate punitive tariffs on Earth. On what exactly wasn't clear. Silence? We're very competitive there. The Lucari Combine, economy first and morality optional, suggested freezing human assets, until someone pointed out we'd moved those assets 2 weeks earlier. Ah, said the Lucari treasurer, in the universal tone of someone realizing the joke is on them. The Karathi, 6 Eyes, excellent soldiers, and an ongoing feud with gravity, asked me if Earth was truly angry. I said we were past anger. He asked what was past anger. I said planning. He changed the subject. The assembly prided itself on redundancy, multiple grids, triple fail-safes, resilience printed on infrastructure like a brand. Then one afternoon, the capital spire went dark. Doors sealed. Elevators froze. Gate arrays reported external authorization conflict, which is a polite way of saying someone else is holding the keys, and they didn't leave a note. What they never noticed, in 9 decades of open cooperation, was that most of their security firmware had human root code. We offered it to them decades ago, open source, for efficiency. They never asked why the update cycles passed through Terran relays first. Emergency reds came on. Guards ran patterns that looked less like drills and more like choreography someone forgot to rehearse. Every comm lit with the same error. Central authentication revoked. I'd never heard a whole government ask, by who, in unison before. It sounded less like outrage and more like a choir realizing the hymn is about them. Screens blinked. No anthem, no crest, just Earth. Not speeches, footage, Factories that weren't on any assembly blueprint. Orbital yards we never listed. Defense platforms we'd never mentioned. Autonomous fleets. And one label, Arc Protocol. You could feel the air change when they saw it. Then the live feed. Human, late 50s, plain black shirt, calm voice. This is not a war declaration. This is a correction. For decades, Earth gave you energy, medicine, food, time. You answered with arrogance and blood. We will not conquer you. We will not destroy you. But we will never be beneath you again. Reactions in the room were almost worth charging admission for. The Nelith Archon tried to start a rebuttal, but forgot his microphone was dead. Turns out, dignity has a shorter battery life than you'd think. The Kirek delegate attempted to override orbital control to demonstrate sovereignty. The panel replied, permission denied by external route. His jaw hinge clicked twice before he stopped trying. The Vizari foreign minister began drafting a return to trust statement. The draft stalled on the word mutual. Security declared an evacuation. The gates refused to open. Someone suggested air-gapping the capital. Someone else had to ask what that meant. A guard asked me, "What are your demands?" "We already made one," I said. "Listen." The assembly didn't fall. It unraveled. Falling is quick. Unraveling is patient. Borders heated. Pirates rebranded as private security providers. Member states remembered they didn't like their neighbors. The Lucaris banking AIs built on our code started misbehaving like children left with matches. Their economy followed suit. We didn't send fleets. We sent consultants, advisors, stabilizers. Every temporary measure came with a quiet software clause that meant our help could never be entirely removed. They knew it. They accepted it anyway. We fixed their systems for a price, small, reasonable, and usually denominated in sovereignty. The Khorne Syndic hired 3 human firms to secure their jump lanes, then tried to pass a bill banning excessive human influence. The bill kept being postponed because, thanks to us, their ships kept arriving on time. The Jultari passed a resolution declaring human stabilization units a temporary necessity. In Jultari culture, temporary is anything under 50 years. The Kirak announced they'd refocus on other strategic theaters after failing to log into their own defense grid without our password. Within 6 months, most surviving infrastructure was dependent on human oversight. Dependence is just control wearing a smile and handing you the pen to sign it. One phrase started circulating, "Ask Earth." Not shouted, not ordered, just instinct. 1 year in, the assembly voted to dissolve. They called it restructuring. We let them keep the word. It's easier to pack when you think you're moving by choice. We didn't conquer the galaxy. We just stopped showing up when they called. Trade moved where we let it. Defenses worked because we kept the lights on. Medicine healed because we'd left the recipe and kept the chef. We didn't put boots on worlds. We put fingerprints on systems. Once that's done, geography is just a sentimental detail. On Mirabel's Gate, the Port Authority declared neutrality. They walked our advisors to the airfield with smiles and rifles, the sort of combination that says, Leave, but nicely. The director told me, "We're not anti-Earth. We're just not yours." "Understandable," I said. "Try to keep your grid from exploding." The Visari wrote a paper on the ethics of reliance, then hired 3 human ethicists to implement it. The ethics did exactly what they were supposed to: keep everyone calm while the leash tightened another notch. The Lucari decided to replace one of our licensed AIs with a homegrown model. It collapsed in a week. We sent a consultant with a gratitude-compatible license. Gratitude is now an annual requirement. They never miss it. The Kirak tried to save face by challenging one of our diplomats to ritual combat. Our diplomat sent back a calendar invite with 3 alternative dates and a list of dietary restrictions. The duel was cancelled for process contamination, which in Kiraki means we just remembered how the last one ended. People ask if this was the day humanity took over. It wasn't. We just stopped pretending we needed permission to be necessary. And if there's a moral here, it's this: silence isn't peace. It's the part where everyone holds their breath before the match hits the powder. We didn't light it. We just stepped back when they did. And when they came looking for the grown-ups, we were already in the walls, with a toolkit, an invoice, and a timetable. They used to call us harmless. Now they call us first. And if you think those are the same thing, you've never been in a room that goes dark because someone decided your sovereignty's warranty has expired.